Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Show and Tell Monthly. This month, we've got some really rad creators lined up. We've got folks from the Tomorrow Lab Suitcase Synth Modulino, Ivor Tracker with Ivor Hewitt, and Mpang from the Eucrit Air project. It's going to be a really rad show. Lots of really cool projects happening here. Just some quick housekeeping at the top of the line. At this point, everyone should have received an email about your submissions for the summit. We had a little bit of a delay on getting stuff out just because there was a lot and we were trying to sort out some of the various details and logistics around how many people we could fit in a space and how many things we can fit in a schedule. But it's looking really, really rad. There's going to be so many cool speakers. I'm getting really stoked, especially like there's some really great speakers focusing on different aspects of open source and medical, open source and textiles, open source and business models. It's going to be a really great year. There's some really cool workshops. I'm really excited about Priyanka Mankin's touchy-feely algae. I really love biotextiles. So I'm really excited to put my hands in some weird bio yarn. It should be really neat. But yes, the summit is well underway. Tickets are on sale. If you haven't secured your ticket yet, maybe now's a good time. Midstream, go open the website, 2025.oshwa.org, and get your ticket. We're really excited to see folks in Edinburgh this year. And with that, we're going to get started. We're starting up with the suitcase. I promise I can speak. Suitcase Synth Modulino. So I'm going to bring on our friends from the project. We've got Ted, we've got Schwong, we've got Pepin, and we've got Jesse. Hello, folks. How's it going?
Hey.
Hi.
Doing well.
Who am I? Welcome. So your group is from all over the world. Well, not all over the world, but all over the States from what I hear. So where's everyone based?
Wow. We're all over right now. Tomorrow Lab is based in NYC in Brooklyn. That's where Shuang and Jesse are. I'm in Los Angeles at the moment, and Pepin is in Richmond.
Amazing. Love to see collaboration across space and time in this way, especially on such a cool project. So let's talk a little bit about the Suitcase Synth Modulino. It only took me 4 tries.
Nailed it.
It's a done
First try.
So would we like to add our presentation now? Yeah, perfect. Take it away.
So hi everyone. First, it's so nice to be here. My name is Shuang. I'm an electronic engineer. With me there are other people. Ted, do you want to?
Sure. Hey, I'm Ted Ulrich, one of the partners at Tomorrow Lab, and I head up electronic development and share design with business partner Pepin.
Hey, I'm Pepin Gilardi. I lead mechanical engineering. I'm the other partner at Tomorrow Lab. I share a lot of the design responsibilities with Ted, and I collaborate a lot with Jesse.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I do industrial design at Tomorrow.
Yeah. So you're probably wondering, what is Tomorrow Lab? Tomorrow Lab is a hardware invention studio based in New York. We've been operating for about 15 years. We create new hardware products for clients of all kinds. And it's normally, secret consulting work. But we have a sponsored YouTube series called Potentially Genius. Potentially Genius, it's a web series on YouTube. As I mentioned, it's sponsored by DigiKey. And how it works is DigiKey brings us a guest, and that guest brings us a component. And then we use our 4-phase process to invent some new type of product with that component. We film the whole process, and then we reveal it to the guest in the end as a surprise, and we get their reaction. And so we're already on year 4 of this, season 4. And we have, today we're talking about episode 16 with Arduino. It's the Arduino plug and make kit.
Cool. Yeah, so Potentially Genius, it's like hardware Iron Chef. And this was like one of our favorite episodes because we were brought an incredible component from Arduino. Alessandro Ranalucci who's leads product there, brought this to us, and it's this really cool kit that reminds us of all the reasons we got into enjoying Arduino in the first place, but making it even easier for people to get into making. And sort of the secret behind this is it starts with an Arduino, but attached to it is this great series of I2C components, and it comes with these modulinos, and each modulino is I2C connected, and you can daisy chain them. Plus, the Arduino has its own display and sensors on board. And so we looked at all of these sensors, and we thought, like, what are some things that we could make with these sensors? And really celebrate like how versatile this system is.
So this is part of our development process. We often start with a couple of ideas and then choose one of them to fully develop it into a functional prototype. For this project specifically, we started with essentially 3 ideas to sketch out. Because the plug and make kit come with this Arduino microcontroller that is UNO R4, which itself has like a lot of IoT ability. It has the Wi-Fi connection. It has just a lot of the IoT ability that can be signified through some of the development. Basically, our first idea was that we were going to do like a dollhouse smart home build play where you can like monitor your home status live. And then another idea in a similar vein is that we were going to do a train car style, because it's daisy chain, it looks like a train, and you can monitor the train, like the New York City train real-time data to see where the train is at. But okay, on top of those two, like the IoT aspect, these 2 ideas wasn't like essentially caught our eyes because we also want to signify the modularity and the diversity of things you can do with the plug and make kit, which lead us to the final decision. We went with the idea, which is like the keyboard build play. Basically, we wanted to do a capacitive touched keyboard design that can leverage as much as Modulino as possible. So from there, because we know that we're going to do a capacitive touch design, and we were able to find this amazing components at the open source hardware archive. We found this like MPR121 that is I2C capable, and also like it's a capacitive touch driver, and it's certified. It basically uses the quick connection, which means that it's Modulino friendly. You can daisy chain this with other existing Modulino that we have already. So on the slide, you can see this is our like initial prototype where we have the Arduino Uno R4 connected to the MPR121, and we made a quick like touch capacitive touch plate as keyboards.
Yeah, so on the hardware side, we knew we wanted to have this keyboard PCB as its own Modulino and put everything in a nice package so that it was sort of playable live, where you could control the interface and play on the keys. We're not the first people to turn an Arduino into a synthesizer, but we just wanted to make like a really fun package that explored the modularity. So we ended up focusing more on the portability part of it, where the suitcase synth comes in, and there's a lot of fun precedent for that in synthesizers. You go ahead. This was like some of the early design work, just exploring how it would fold up and stash the PCB. Clips into the back with magnets, and it has this hinged handle that becomes a stand. So yeah, that was the industrial design side of it.
Why do this? In theory, these slides are supposed to move, but I don't think
there's an animation there, but that's okay. You can see it. It does that.
You can see it.
Yeah.
So Jesse took care of the PCB layout. He gave me like an outline when we were designing this, and then with that outline, we designed this capacitive touch part of the keyboard. So you saw from the early stage copper tape keyboard into this final design. This is actually my first time designing a capacitive touch PCB, so it's very, very rewarding. It was really, really fun to do this. And also because we were working with this plug and make kit that itself has like this strong visual element, I wanted our board to have a similar like playfulness as well as like fun, some fun elements basically, beyond just functionality. And obviously some mistakes were made, but it was a learning process. So diving into like the software implementation, basically, we, as mentioned earlier, we wanted this project to be leveraging as much as Modulino as possible. And some of the earlier things I took care of is like very like rudimentary, because this Modulino come with like a monophonic buzzer, which means that like the kind of synthesizer we're designing or we're coding must work with that monophonic buzzer and leverage that as a sound making part. And if like making a synthesizer, there's a lot of consideration in terms of like if you want a last note priority synth or first note priority synth. All of these leads into like the data structure of how we're going to prioritize the notification and triggers. And then there's also this like bottom selector on the Modulino. We kind of used it as like a octave selector, so you can choose across like 3 different octaves from going like low to high octave. And it has, because the bottom Modulino has like this built-in LED on it, we're able to see which octave we're at all times, which is really helpful. And because my bandwidth got pretty packed by the like end of the project, Jesse, who's really like the industrial designer and also like focusing on mechanical design, had to took over the coding part and actually did a lot of amazing work to develop the rest of the project.
Yeah, I mean, I do have some piano keyboard experience, but basically we just added some fun controls like a vibrato effect, which warbles the note up and down, and you can control the depth and the speed of that with a knob and this time of flight sensor moving your hand forward and backwards. And it visualizes it on this really neat display that is built into the Arduino R4. It has this cool pixel grid. So it's kind of a variable wave form. The pitch bend was also really fun. We wanted to take advantage of the IMU, the accelerometer tilt sensor. So I built a little, it's like a piece of spring steel attached to some 3D prints that lets you just literally tilt the platform back and forth. And that lets you bend the pitch up and down live, the same way a pitch bend wheel would work on a traditional synthesizer. So it's pretty fun to play. You do have to work within the constraints of a single octave, although the nature of this I2C daisy chaining means you could add more in series if you want. But the octave selector buttons let us work around that.
So do you mind putting the other video on top?
Oh, it shows the notes you're playing too.
So all of our project is documented in GitHub, and we have an episode of all of us talking about how we made everything working and how you can make this thing again, basically, on our YouTube. And yeah, there will be more PG episodes to come. We're working on season 4 now.
Amazing. This is such a cool project. I really love this setup you have of this bring a piece of hardware and we'll figure out some way to make it extra cool. That is such a great project. And I can't believe I'm only learning about it 4 years in. How did that even start?
We, even 4 years prior to that, had a YouTube series called The Teardown that's on the Tomorrow Lab channel. We have a big practice in our product development process where we take things apart or tear them down. And so those YouTube videos kind of caught the interest of DigiKey, and we whipped up this series that's really almost like a made for YouTube version of what we do at Tomorrow Lab, the rest of the time for professional client work. But a lot of times we can't show that work, it's confidential. And so this is a great, this YouTube series, Potentially Genius, is a great way for us to demonstrate our process, also help show the world how you can use components from DigiKey to build your own projects, but then also kind of educate and entertain a little bit about what the design process is like.
Yeah, that's such a great way to approach it too. I feel like a lot of times people are kind of making on their own in a lot of ways. So seeing that kind of process in a more kind of practical sense and how it can look when you're working with a company is a really interesting way to approach it. What has it been like finding ways to unite your work, kind of like daily work, with creating something that's open source? How has open source kind of changed your perspective on making or affected how you make things?
Yeah.
Sure,
yes, you want to get in there?
Certification.
I'm very much connected to the community, I guess. So I took the initiative to take this opportunity to certify this project because I think it's a great one to start with. Oftentimes client works and, paid client works doesn't really work well with open source hardware. But what I think, like, there are a lot of opportunities all over the places using open source components, or like when you're working on a project that could be open source, you should try to get it open source certified. So that's obviously part of it. There's also another aspect is like how great the community is. With our, because we're working with DigiKey, and basically throughout the process, it was very transparent as well. And they know about the open source association. They are an active member of the open source association as well. So it really helped to have them be our partner and sponsor us for this project. They were also really on top of it when trying to get us to update our documentation as needed. So it's really nice to have that aspect as well.
Definitely. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Poki.
I was just gonna say, and broadly, hardware is so difficult that we have to do paid work, but our paid work would be infinitely harder if there wasn't open source work to build with and build within. And so part of that bargain is you need to contribute as well, however you can. And sometimes you go full open source and you certify it, and sometimes it's just about creating projects and putting them out there. We hold ideas and work pretty lightly. It's more when people come to us and say, I need this and I have a business plan around it, and then that makes sense, right? Okay, we're gonna bill for that work, and that's sort of paid work. But yeah, that would be infinitely harder without open source work to supplement that.
Yeah, there's actually such a interesting aspect of business and open source where a lot of people do sometimes feel like, oh, there's no way that I can successfully run a business if it's open source. But we do have a lot of really successful open source businesses like DigiKey, where no one, this is a fun joke that Alicia likes to bring up in a lot of her talks, Alicia, our executive director, is no one really buys products because it's patented. There's very few people that are I will only buy patented work. That's the only time that I will purchase a device. Yeah. So having that option of being actually, a lot of people will specifically go out of their way to buy work because it is open source, because they have the ability to modify, improve, and change it. That's a huge selling point for a consumer who wants to have more knowledge of their devices and items in their home. It's a really great way to kind of mix it up a little bit, get people more engaged with what it can mean to make something and give it to the world. Do you anticipate making more certified work in the future?
I think we could. One of the other things we're doing with Potentially Genius is essentially trailblazing customer support paths directly with the companies who sell those components. Adafruit has always been open source from the beginning, and their support and communities and forums are world class, but other components aren't necessarily. And so, some of the work that we do, just even at the beginning of the episodes, is getting to know the technical support teams at whatever, component supplier we're working with, and making sure that even if it isn't open sourced, at least there's a path that folks can follow, to access the example code, board layout, hookup guides, or hello world examples that we all need to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, there's really a continuum in terms of support and ability to use things, but open source is the sort of like the pinnacle of it, the state of the art of sort of making sure that people can use your design.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm biased. To me, open source is everything.
Yeah.
And especially in hardware, it's complicated. A lot of people don't realize the ins and outs of there's very few chips in the world that are open source, actually, when it comes to so with our certification program, we are very clear that the components that you physically have control over, as long as those are open source, that counts as certifiable. A fun thing that people often don't realize, Raspberry Pis are not open source, but they're frequently used in open source work because you can say you can purchase this component and use it, but you can find alternatives as well. But very few options for what those boards are exist in a fully open source way. So it's really interesting, especially when folks come from an open source software perspective, where everything you make is immediately open source, or you get to decide the source. Whereas with hardware, you have to do a lot more work when it comes to putting it out there and making sure that that exists as open source and that people know it's open source and they can keep making it open source.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more complex. So.
Yeah, there's a little bit more work put into it. But yeah, this is an incredible project. I think it's so fun, and I love the keyboard aspect, the capacitive touch. It's so great. That's such a nice aspect to have. Have you thought about any other changes or modifications down the line, or are you feeling comfortable with where it's at and gonna let other people make changes?
Well, that's sort of part of the modularity of it is you can plug in anything you want that communicates over the same protocol. One comment we got on YouTube, which I think is wise, is this would be really fun with a speaker instead of a monophonic buzzer, because then you could have multiple tones or change the timbre of the tone. But that would, require some different code, and I guess that's the whole point of the open source thing, is you can build from that platform. But we just wanted to make it a neat little package.
Yeah, and we're hoping that this structure of building a through line between your tone and modifiers, we can hand that out there, and people can start to change that structure and the ideas that it grows on top of that.
Yeah, amazing. That's what we like to see. Thank you so much for joining us today and showing off this. I'm going to say it properly again. Suitcase Synth Modulino.
There we go.
Nice.
And we look forward to seeing what else Tomorrow Labs gets up to. It's really cool to know that this series exists. I know I'll be spending some time on YouTube after this live stream. Have a great day, y'all. Thanks for coming on.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, what a wonderful start. It's so cool to see such a neat little project like that. I love seeing things that are so easily modified, and then I love when it has a good strong package, something just making sure that the handle can become a stand. That's just smart design. Love to see that kind of work. Next, we're going to bring on M. Pang from Ucrit Air. Hello, M. How are you doing today? Oh, I think you are muted. You have to unmute your mic.
Hi, I'm doing really well. How are you?
Great. I'm great. Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining all of you from warm and fuzzy St. Paul, Minnesota, where it's about, I don't know, minus something outside right now.
I feel that we're really rocking the weather this year.
Yeah, we are.
Winter's back for real this time.
Hopefully it gets warm soon. This is,
Yeah, I could do with a little spring. Yeah. I wouldn't mind a little spring. So you are one of the people working at Entropic Design, Entropic Designs, Entropic Engineering on the UCRIT Air.
Yep, that's right.
So how did this project come to be?
So this project actually came to be through one of those random, like, happenstance kind of situations. So I was scheduled to give a talk at a conference called DevCon in Thailand, November last year. And I was scheduled to give a talk about clean air and the importance of clean air, especially clean indoor air. I was talking to one of the conference organizers. I said, yeah, screw it. Let me make a fun toy, and I'll ask a quiz during my talk, and we'll hand these out to people who get the questions right. Kind of do a little bit of a fun element of a talk like that. The organizer of the conference then said, well, that sounds really awesome. Can you make like a lot more so we can give them out to people? And so kind of one thing led to another, and this project kind of, sort of organically grew and grew and grew, and is still growing in ways that continue to shock and surprise me depending on the day.
That's awesome. I mean, some really great ask from a group to be like, what if you just made a bunch of them?
Yeah.
What if we just had so many?
Yeah.
So clean indoor air and outdoor air is something I'm also very passionate about. I think we've all been thinking a lot about air quality in the last couple of years, especially. So something like this, where you're kind of bringing it into a cute gamification, is a really fun way to approach it, especially engaging people that don't really like looking at big, scary sensor numbers or like overwhelmed by that kind of thing. So yeah, tell us about this journey.
So I'm going to give you the talk from that conference. Obviously, I cut it down a lot, and then we can sort of tell a little bit about the history of the project. And I have a bunch of them sitting all around me here. We can do a little bit of a demo, and then we can sort of explore the space a little bit together. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
So just a little bit about me. Hi, I'm Em. I am the founder of Entropic Engineering. We are a engineering and consulting product kind of design company, though we do focus kind of more on the hardware and kind of deep tech sort of side. I'm also one of the founders of Open Aeros, which is an aerosol science company that's completely open source. And we have, fundamentally innovated the fundamental tool of aerosol science and reduced the cost by about an order of magnitude or two. I will be submitting for OSHWA certification very soon. I'm also the executive director of the OSHWA project, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that's interested in doing research and development in, as well as doing advocacy, outreach, education on clean indoor air. You might be seeing a little bit of a theme here going on with my interests. This was the talk from my presentation, and I thought there were some interesting things to share. So the first thing that is kind of a fun kind of icebreaker. So we eat about 1.8 kilos of food. That's maybe about 5 pounds of food a day. We drink, maybe a bit less. I'm really bad with the pounds. We drink about 2 kilograms of water. That's probably closer to 5 pounds. How much air do you think we consume in terms of mass every day, just on average, if you had to guess?
Like, I feel like air is like the main thing we do. So I'm going to say like 200 pounds?
About 12.
About 12. Okay, that makes more sense.
About 20 pounds, right? 20 something
pounds is not that many. Yeah, air is light.
Yeah, air is light, but you're breathing in, about an Olympic swimming pool of the stuff, right? So we consume more air as human beings than we really do any other substances, right? 6 times as much as we drink water, and more than 6 times as much as we eat food. So and much in the same way that you care that your food doesn't have doesn't have some kind of disease, or your water isn't polluted, you should also care that your air is clean. Traditionally, we've always considered clean air in terms of like what the outdoor air is like, what the AQI is like today. But most of us spend over 90% of our lives indoors. And the thought has always been that if the outside air is clean, the inside air is clean, and vice versa. If the outside air is dirty, so the inside air must be dirty. And that's just, as you know, not true. The problem is that if you're spending 90% of your day indoors and the air indoors is not good, you're going to have a really bad day. Or as I like to say, bad air, bad time. This is a study, I've linked the DOI if anybody's interested, but it's showing that if the indoor air in your home, right, if it's not well ventilated, if you're talking about 1,500 ppm of CO2, which is quite easy to do in a home that's not well ventilated, you're literally getting a little less smart. Your cognitive ability is dropping significantly. Worryingly and interestingly, this also happens if you're in a car and the air conditioning is on recirc. Your cognitive ability goes down, your focus goes down. If you've ever felt tired or sleepy or yawny when you're in the car and the air conditioning's on recirc, you might want to check your CO2. There have been studies that show that you can improve test scores simply by improving the air quality in schools. So obviously, as you just mentioned, you also have a bad time if the indoor air is not well ventilated, if it's stuffy. There's a lot of airborne infectious disease, right? Tuberculosis, chickenpox, measles, and of course the big one that we've spent the last few years dealing with that I won't mention right now because I think we've all heard a little bit enough of it. Dirty indoor air is also leading to things like heart attack, right? You're about three to 3.5 times more likely to have a heart attack after you're exposed to polluted traffic. And simultaneously, the opposite is also true, where if you improve the quality of your indoor air, studies have shown that your blood pressure goes down measurably in about 2 weeks, which is insane to think about, right? So the good news is that this is all cheap and easy and trivial to fix. You can wear a mask, right? If you can't control your environment, you can put a portable air cleaner in your space, right? The one in this picture here costs about $35 online and does a great job. You can open the windows if the air is clean outside. You can upgrade the filter in your ventilation system, and of course you can do things like add germicidal UV lights to handle airborne infectious disease. And all of this stuff is pretty cheap, pretty easy, and is off the shelf technology that's accessible right now. The question is, if it's so cheap and easy, why isn't this already fixed? Got a guess?
Capitalism.
Yeah. Capital. That's one of the reasons, and the other reason is that you really can't fix what you can't see. So it's one thing if you're a complete aerosol science nerd like I might be. You can have a suite of sensors in your spreadsheet and your graphs, and you go oh no, the CO2 is a little high today, got to crank up the AC a little bit, and all these kinds of things. But you really can't fix what you can't see, and a lot of air quality monitors, right, tell you have a problem, but don't necessarily quantify that problem and tell you when you fixed it. So yeah, I could go and buy an air quality monitor. It'll tell me I have really terrible air indoors, and now what, right? And the other thing that I want to talk about is I just spent the last 5-10 minutes scaring the heck out of everybody, going what the heck, am I getting less smart? Am I going to get sick because the air's not good, right? As human beings, when we hear this kind of scary information, oh, I'm going to get a disease, etc., we tend to want to distance ourselves from it. It tends to be, if you've had a disease in the last 4 or 5 years that we've all been struggling through, right? That tends to bring trauma, and it's not a good time, right? So we wanted to build, and the reason for building this device is we just wanted to kind of have a little fun, kind of bring the joy and a little bit of whimsy and add a little bit of cool art into the situation, around this issue. And also kind of do a little bit of brain hacking, in that as human beings, we're really good at short-term decision making, right? I want to, if I invest in this thing now, I will get a return, tomorrow at 100 times. We're really good at saying, hell yes, that's a good idea. But we're really bad as humans about, hey, if I make a 1% change every single day for the next, 5 years and 10 years, I'm going to have much better health outcomes, right? We're bad at this kind of long-term thinking, long-term reasoning. So what you can kind of do to trick people or to kind of brain hack a little bit is to have a little creature that would experience the benefit or the disbenefit of clean or dirty air much shorter and gamify it a little bit, just so that people can have a little fun with it, and just so that people can also experience a little joy, and kind of act as a starting point to kind of get excited about this kind of stuff, more than scaring people with big scary studies and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's what we built is the Ucrit Air. It's a little Tamagotchi pet here. This one is more empty because I haven't played it as much. But here, so he's got it. You buy him a nice little home. You can buy him furniture. You can buy him an air purifier. You can buy him UV lights. You can get him a little chicken friend. And we've also got obviously all the air quality stats here. But if you don't want to look at that, you'll see there's a little face on the cloud there, and the cloud will say, we'll make a frowny face if the air's really bad, or if the air's good, it'll give you a little like smiley face. And so the art on this will also change. Additionally, things like the flowers will bloom when the air is really good, or they'll look less good when the air is not so good. So it acts as this kind of gamified interface to sort of start to think about air, and to start to get people to understand that when they change things in the air, they can see the benefit and the responses in that in a quicker fashion, sort of in a gamified kind of fun little cute way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fun. I love that. Especially like you're right. Like gamification is unfortunately a thing that works really well with the human mind. Tell any kid in like late 90s, early 2000s what the most important thing was, and it was keeping their Tamagotchi alive.
Yeah. Yep.
So something like this, where it's like it actually has real world interaction and like shows you what is happening in the space around you. Like get those in the hands of like 38-year-olds, and suddenly I'm sure there'd be changes in that school.
Yeah, so this is actually already happened with these things. So we made at this conference, we gave out a few hundred of them. We've had like 3 or 4 people now reach out and say, you know what, I went to the office and my pet wasn't doing as well as it was doing at home, and I used some of there's some clever algorithms on here that will estimate what the ventilation rate is in a room, will estimate how well like the HVAC system is working and all this other cool stuff. And they've said, and then I went to talk to my maintenance person. The maintenance person said, oh yeah, I can dial up the fresh air a little bit. I can change the filters, and then the air quality improves. So we've actually had that happen quite a few times already in just getting about 100, 200 of these out there, to folks. So it does work because mostly they were grumpy that their little pet was sad and they weren't getting the items that they wanted. and of course their air quality. Yeah, if it works, it works, right?
We gotta take what we can get these days.
Yeah.
So how many are out there in the world at this point?
Yeah, so we sort of nothing to 150 of them was about 45 days. It was one of those open source projects. And really most of the work happened inside of about 30 of those days because there's some spin up time and some lag time here and there. So there's about 150, 200 of them in the world right now that we gave out at this conference, and we've given out to various groups, and we're continuing to do outreach and all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where do you kind of see it going from here? Are you gonna is it a kind of a add more features situation, add more things that you can get your little guy, or
so like as like this entire project is like one of those like and then it got really out of control kind of situations where when the beauty of this open source community is when you put work out there, people are like, this is cool, can I have it for this, and can I add this, and all that kind of stuff. So we actually got a very substantial amount of follow-on ground funding and interest. So we'll be developing this. This was like I said, this was a 30-ish day prototype, right? It's a little big, it's a little rough right now, but so we're actually going to make 2 new versions. One will be a lot smaller, a lot more attractive, kind of a miniaturized version of this. And we're also going to make a wearable and add art and add gamification and all that kind of stuff. This thing has NFC right now, so we just added that. So there's all sorts of fun things you can do. And then what we'll be doing is, once we've kind of revised the design, we'll be doing a little bit of a global science project where we're going to get 10, 20,000 of these things out in the field, and we're going to have folks take them to their offices and to businesses that they go to, and about their lives, and share that information in a privacy preserving manner. And we'll start to get scientific data, which is a true kind of in situ measurement of like, what's the ventilation picture look like, all over the world indoors, right? What HVAC systems look like and all that kind of stuff. So we will start to do some citizen science kind of outreach. In addition to obviously adding a lot of the gamification aspects, adding leaderboards. We're still divided on whether these can fight each other like Pokemon, or it should be more of like a Tamagotchi thing where it's more kind of care and pet oriented. So yeah, and it just keeps snowballing. I just got an email this morning from some folks in Europe who are like, hey, we want to do a pilot project with a school, our local school district. Like, can you support that? So it's sort of turning into much more than I ever thought it was, because like I was going to make a much cruder version of this and give 5 away to like people who answered quiz questions in my talk correctly.
Yeah, it's always so fun to see like how quickly something can grow from what feels like almost a nothing idea. You're like, yeah, I don't know, a Tamagotchi for air. And then it's like, no, a Tamagotchi for air.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so neat to see all the ways that it's already growing. I'm really excited to see what comes out of the development too. I too am conflicted on whether they should fight each other or just hang out with each other.
Yeah.
But maybe hanging out is nicer. Or maybe the fighting is like a specific version.
Yeah. It could be like a play versus environment kind of thing, where like you get your friends once together and you like go on missions or whatever. They're like without direct like head-to-head combat.
Yeah, because I guess in the end, like when it comes to air quality, it's something we should all care about and be passionate about and want to see change.
Yeah.
So maybe discouraging a kind of versus aspect.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my opinion as well. But it's an open source project and it's a big community. And some people are like, no, the way that you get me to improve my air quality is if I can go and like fight my friend's one and it's like better than theirs because my air quality in my home is so good and the guy's really strong and got good stats and stuff.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on today and giving us a bit of a rundown on such a wonderful little device. I think, it's definitely something we're going to be keeping track of. Thank you for certifying.
Yeah, no, and we thought that was funny, and we're like, yeah, we want to OSHWA, and then here we are talking about it, right? I didn't know this would happen. It all just happened by accident, kind of this project, which is kind of the lovely way of open source. And that's one of the things, right? A lot of people who've worked on a lot of very large and well-known open source projects contributed hardware design, contributed code, and all that kind of stuff because they're our friends, and they're like, oh, you're making this cool thing. Let me get you my super fast assembly language like audio playback, whatever. Shout out to Dmitry Grinberg, who worked on Android and worked on iOS and Mac OS. He wrote the audio processing code in this thing, and it's all in ASM and hand optimized to go super fast and all this other kind of stuff, just because he was a friend of the project and the company. I was like, yeah, open source, let's go.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's so great to see just the ways that collaborations can develop.
Yeah.
And like on a project like this where there is like so many different aspects of like, I mean, you're building a game that is also affected by real world interactions, and there's a lot of things to keep in mind when you're bringing that all together. So finding those people and being able to make that all work is such a joy.
Yeah, and we had game developers and we had a bunch of artists. Like we crammed art everywhere in this thing. There's just cool art everywhere. You know, there are just so many wonderfully talented people who showed up and was like, this is my thing. Like somebody was like, I really like chip tunes and making like super cool chip tunes. Like I'm going to chip tune the heck out of this thing. And so that's where we got our sound effects and all that stuff from.
I love it. I love it. That's amazing. It's really great. I did actually join the Discord, and I've been lurking. And I recommend that other people do the same. It's very fun to see just like folks engaging and wanting to find new tweaks and adjustments. It's one of my favorite parts of open source is seeing people work together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on today and giving us some info. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled for the new versions of the Euclid Air. I'm personally very excited about a wearable.
And we just put up a wiki yesterday and updated the website. We were one of those read the source code kind of documentation situations, and was getting a little bit much in the Discord. So open source project, you know what it's like.
It always grows more than you expect. Okay, thank you so much, Em. Talk to you soon. Okay, another really rad one. Yeah, I think I'm really going to be super stoked to get a wearable version because I love wearables. And we're going to bring on our final guest today. We've got Ivor Hewitt. Hello, Ivor. How are you doing today?
Yeah, all good.
And you are based in the UK?
Yeah, it is just dark and cold and wet. So it's normal. It's what we get
just
here.
An average day in the UK. I'm really looking forward to experiencing it myself this year in Edinburgh. I bought a poncho. I was told that ponchos aren't stylish, but I bought a poncho anyway.
You'll need it. Yeah.
So you did some work on a device that you have named the Ivor Tracker.
Indeed.
And how did that come about? What inspired this device?
Yeah. Well, first, I think I need to cover the name. So yes, I ended up calling it IvorTrack. Because at first I started off by saying, well, for now it's called IvorTrack, but I won't really call it that. And I considered other names, but there's I thought of actually OpenTrack, but there's already a commercial non-open source tracking service. They call themselves Open Tracking. So I thought it was a bit too similar and likely to cause confusion or trouble. So I steered clear of that. So IvorTrack is what it ended up as.
Yes, IvorTrack. I don't know why I keep wanting to add an R at the end. Because trackers. So I know that you do a lot of long. Oh yeah, let's pick up the. So you do a lot of long distance work, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm an ultramarathon runner, and that's me there in the photo. I'm running there 150 odd miles across Greece. And when I started this, live tracking at races was pretty rare. I mean, it's much more common now, but back then most races didn't offer it. And even when they did, it was often unreliable, or they had overloaded websites, or the updates were laggy, and it was uncertain about where you actually were. Because during these races, it's quite common to have people meet you along the way to provide you with like food, water, encouragement. So reliably knowing where you are is it's kind of quite handy. And there were commercial services available, but for those you had to rent a device for a set period of time. So it's fine if you only need it occasionally for like once a year or once every twice a year for an event with a fixed date. Because you need to book it, you need to wait for it to be posted to you, you need to use it, then you need to mail it back. And obviously, if I just want to go out and spend a day running and have somebody know where I am, or have them to be able to go, just come and meet me somewhere, if I've got my own device, I could just get on with this. And the one time I did actually hire one, it was my crew kept missing me. So I thought about using a phone, but that comes with its own issues because you got battery drain from running the GPS, you've got to write an own app, and then you've got trouble with connecting to health centers, which I'll mention in a minute. And finally, when you're ultra running, you want your phone to work if you need it. You don't want to pull it out and it to be flat. So I prefer to keep my phone completely separate, just for emergencies. On top of that, endurance running, it can mess with your mind. So after like 12 or 20 hours, even on the move, just basic decisions become really hard. And I've had times where I've either got too hot or too cold. And one time I dropped out of a race 10 miles from the end because I was freezing cold, but I was completely forgetting I was carrying a backpack, and in my backpack I got multiple layers of clothes and a heat blanket. So it's I've just carried that back with me 90 miles. So the idea of having a live system that could actually also monitor but also share my condition live seemed like a great idea. So I started looking at off-the-shelf trackers, and they're marketed for monitoring your fleet or checking on elderly relatives. But clearly, the target market is spying. They're cheap, they're small. They work by SMS, so you send a message, they ping back the location, or they can be set up to ping to a tracking website. Albeit the documentation is really limited, and so I set up like a man-in-the-middle server to capture the data, figure out so I could write my own service. And there you can see at the bottom, it's a really trivial data. It just does it like a UDP packet, and it sends out its location, time, distance, and things like that. So it's just a text string. And I discovered Leaflet.js, which is incredible software mapping tool. So after like a few weeks of hacking, I'd got a system up and running on a Raspberry Pi, listening for those packets coming in, put the location, you can see it there, and it puts the location on the map. But the device wasn't great. The battery wasn't great. And even though it works, the chips were sort of documents, and I couldn't write my own software for it. And I like writing software. So I thought I'll make my own. So version 1. This is an A9G. I came across this and I thought this will be perfect. That's how it started. It turns out it's not quite that simple. There's a bug on this. The board's defect. There's actually a design flaw. You need to put capacitors on to fix a power issue on it. It doesn't have any charging circuitry on it, and it doesn't do Bluetooth or answer anything else. So it started nice and clean, and we ended up here. This is about the 7th version I did. And you see there, it's got a LiPo charging circuit. It's got a Bluetooth board. It's a tangle of wires. And not only that, I needed 2 programmers to program it. I needed one programmer for the wireless board, and another programmer for the A9G. But the good news, it worked really well. So given it's got the Bluetooth enhanced, I could now log from health sensors, and there, what I'm doing, you can just about see. I'm recording my heart rate off a heart rate strap and my body temperature off a core monitor, and I could publish this. And I was actually ran with this, and it worked really well. And there you got a picture. That's a Bangle JS that I used for doing Bluetooth debugging. And it's again, that's completely separate. It's a really cool open source project. That's by Gordon Williams, I think, who runs that project. But it's just a really fast way of doing Bluetooth coding. So time for a fresh start, and I came across this. I then came across it's something called the VAC 5010. It's called a VAC tracker, and it looked perfect as it's built around a KTEL and Nordic chipsets. So it's got GSM, GPS, Bluetooth, and built-in charging, and it's all pretty compact. But again, pretty soon I hit some issues there. It's got even though it's got a level converter built in, you need to provide it with an external power supply. So even though it runs off USB, if you want to connect external sources, you need to provide like a 3-volt OLED. I need to provide an external 3-volt supply. It doesn't expose its internal I2C lines. So if you want to, like, let's say I want to connect an OLED, then I need to rig up something. So again, although it did come with schematics, which took me back to my early days of microcomputers, where you bought a computer and it came with the manual had the circuit diagram in it, which was awesome. And this comes with its schematics. So I figured out how to patch it, and as you can see there, what I've done, I've put a load of patch wires on it. I've exposed the I2C lines. I've ran the serial port from the wireless chip from the back onto 2 I/O ports. And you see that's a level converter I've bolted on the top there, and glued onto the back there's a 3-volt buck converter. So it worked really fine. I packed it all in a nice blue Hammond closure, and I started running with that one. A bit of a diversion. About this time, there's a lot of excitement about using glucose monitors to measure your carbohydrates for sport. And I looked into a few of the products and those. But none of them. But the one that was available for sport, it wasn't hackable at all. You couldn't get the raw data. Everything had to go through their phone app and their cloud service. So I took a slight detour, reverse engineering those. Sorry, just an aside there. A quick shout out to the Core Temp guys. That's the square sensor in the middle. They were absolutely fantastic. They gave me developer documentation, sample code, and they were ping back and forth emails talking about how do I program it, how do I get data off. The glucose monitor guys, on the other hand, nothing. I tried pinging a few of the different companies and I couldn't get anywhere. They weren't interested at all. So clearly I reverse engineered it and hacked it. I did start with the Libra sensors. That's what's pictured there, which is the same one that they use for the sport tracking. But the problem with that is, I did manage to get the data out, but the problem was that if it detected there was invalid data, it bricked it, which got really expensive really quickly. So I found another sensor. It's called the ADEX. That's a little lozenge. I can't pronounce it. Lozenge-sized shaped one there, and I've managed to use at the top left. You got a Bluefruit, Adafruit Bluetooth sniffer, which is awesome, and I could use that to capture the Bluetooth data, feed it through Wireshark, and I could extract out and figure out what the packets were. And you see there, top right, that's my website for my tracker, and now I'm getting live heart rate, live body temperature, and not only that, I get glucose. You see that I've highlighted the red dots. That's where it's highlighting that I've got a low blood sugar. So it's all compressed there because I've packed all days, but that's actually I think that's a 24-hour period where you see over the second half, I'm starting to run out of energy. So excitement. This is where I get into the really cool bit. I then thought, okay, I'll make my own board. How hard can it be? So I hadn't built anything for a long time. I used to build etched circuits, years ago, using through components. And when I was a teenager, it was very different. So I'd never done any surface mount at all. Any recent projects I've done, it was always just using like the modern modules that you plug together, like Raspberry Pi, Arduino, Adafruit, SparkFun, where you just connect stuff with I2C, which is great, but you can't end up with an elegant finished product. So I learned KiCad, basically mainly by using the data sheets from the different components I was using. Most of them have like a reference circuit in, and what I would do, I would sort of glue those together and then come up with it. Sorry. And then came up with my circuit. What I want to do is put on, so the circuit I include on there, it's got a charging circuit, it's got a battery monitoring circuit, it's got a level converter built in, a thermometer, a flash memory. So everything all on one board. And I was designing this on my commutes on the train to and from work. So it took, there was many months. But there you can see the overall design I've got there. I end up with a 4-layer board. So like the red, that's the top, the blue's the back, orange, that's the power and ground, and then green, that's the data signals. So it's it ended up being quite a complex board, which it's amazing that you can do this yourself with KiCad with just a bit of patience and a lot of practice. And then off it went to JLC PCB, and very exciting. I get a board back, and it's just amazing to see something that just looks so professional. It just looks like, okay, this is something you would normally buy, and I've made it. But I'd never done any surface mount work before. So the next step was learning how to do that. So I needed to learn, how do I do surface mount soldering? So the first thing I decided, I'd start with something really simple, because another project I've got is like a VO2 max device. I think it was on Instructables. I picked off there. There's a whole other project to talk about. But what I wanted to do was add a CO2 sensor to it. So same again, I used KiCad and designed a little, very simple CO2 sensor board. Again, sent that off to JLC PCB. Back comes a blue box, which is still really exciting. And then I need to learn how to do surface mount soldering. So obviously I decided, well, I'll just build a hot plate. So there, I started initially using a PC power supply and a cheap heater off eBay. The problem there is it's a tangle of wires, but also it didn't heat up quickly enough. So then I switched in the middle there. I switched to a ceramic heater, which was just really clunky, and it was awkward to get even heating. So finally, right hand side, it looks like something you would buy. That's a mica heater. I've sandwiched it between two aluminium plates. I've got an Arduino Nano in that little box underneath, and ta-da! Okay, it was months. It took me months to do that, but in the end, it worked. So then next stage, I need to work out how to actually make a circuit like this. So this was surface mount stenciling, which was my next skill I had to learn. And obviously I learned lots of things. Like one is, you see there, top metal. The top metal was to use a metal DIY stencil Don't use a credit card. That's how I started with, and it was a disaster. So no, do it properly. Metal stencil, metal spreader, lots of paste, one sweep, and it just worked. So, and there you've got that's the dining table. So I've got the BOM, the bill of materials on the left. I've got in the middle. I've got a printed map of all the component place, and then I've got a tiny set of tweezers, because some of the components, some of the diodes were like I think it was like 1.8 mil was the length of, one of the diodes I'd got, and then a load of DigiKey packets there. And there were some problems. So first I made a mistake because I hadn't actually read the NRF guide properly, even though it looks like you can program a reset line, and I put it to the most convenient one to solder to. If you actually read the documentation, it explains that no, it's actually fixed to a hard-coded line. So as you see there, what I've had to do is patch the board with a couple of flying leads. And the other one is, you see on there, one of the resistors hadn't soldered down, and it took me I was looking at that under a USB microscope, going over every single component until I finally spotted it. But it worked. And it was very exciting because, I built this, and, obviously I spent hours debugging it and figuring out what was wrong. But once it worked, it just worked. So I could, because I'd used the same chipset as the rack, I could just port my code over and the tracker worked. But then here, what I've done is I've actually got Espruino running on it. So that's the code that runs on the Bangles, on the Bangle JS watches. And now I've got that's the clock from the Bangle running on it, because that's running JavaScript. This Espruino is a JavaScript interpreter. So it's running the Bangle watch there, and also there I can run the Asteroids demo, and that worked on my little board, which was just so exciting, great fun. And after the first bit, I learned a lot on that, and then redesigned, because I had a lot of issues from the first one, and I figured out that one, I needed to understand how to design antennae. So as you see, I've got a diagram that was from the KTEL. That was one of their reference guides for their chipset. They actually had a page there describing how to design an antenna. So I had to go through that and figure out, okay, what distances do I need between the tracks? How much how much grounding do I need behind them, and so on. And the other one is little details like figuring out that I put the sockets the wrong way around. I should have mounted them vertically rather than horizontally, and stuff like that. And then the next stage was case, which is another amazing. So I mentioned KiCad already. The next one was FreeCAD, which is fantastic bit, open source software. And that was the other part of this. The other lesson learned was when you're designing a PCB, think about how it's going to go in the case to start off with, which I hadn't done. And that's why I said I discovered that even though I'd put my connectors right at the edge, I hadn't thought when it's inside a case, the connector for a connector that's inside the case, I want it to be vertical, so I can have the cable plugging onto it rather than squished at the side of the case. The other thing I forgot was the mounting holes. I didn't put any mounting holes on my board because I just didn't think about it until I tried to put it in the case. Obviously, it's too late now, but if I design a new board next time, certainly that's the first thing I will do is put mounting holes in it. Sorry, that was the other thing to mention is you can export the 3D model from KiCad. So what I did is you can export the 3D model from KiCad, import that into FreeCAD, and then build your case around that. And then simply a little diversion here. I wanted nice buttons. The very first one I used those really cheap, clicky project buttons, but instead I wanted the soft press ones. But for that you need a button on top, and they need space to depress down and come in. So again, several months worth of weeks of fiddling around with printing little prototypes to get that working. And there's the evolution from on the left, the A9, the A9G one, the rack one, the Asteroids build, and then say on the right, it looks like it looks like something you would buy because it's all in one board, and it's built with the buttons packed into the case. It ends up like almost like it feels like a commercial product, and it's just so usable. And now I've reprinted it in tough PLA with nice contrasting purple buttons. And then finally, just some data. Like here's two graphs of data I could pull off it. And the top one, so the top one, that's a 24-hour run monitoring glucose. And what's interesting there is because it's a 24-hour run, I have a diary of what I was eating during that. It's one of these where I have a team giving me stuff throughout the 24 hours, and they would write down, 3:04 gave Pringles, 4:15 had Jelly Babies. But what I could do is look at the diary, look at the graph, and actually see on there peaks and troughs of what foods affected me in what way, what's the good things to take, what didn't work so well. And then the bottom graph, that's my core body temperature for that Greece run, where I was running in the heat of Greece. Sorry, and there you can see you can see all the way it goes up and up. That's me applying ice through the day, and you can see it go up, drop down, go up, down. And that's each time I have ice, it drops back down. And then you've got that block that's overnight where I'm running through icy mist, and you can see it drops down, blips up a bit while I exert myself going over a mountain, and then in the morning it lifts. And so it's fascinating to be able to have the data to then understand. In both of these, actually, nothing went wrong, but it's great if something does go wrong. You can similarly look at this and go, well, what happened? Did I have a problem with the food I was taking? Did I get too cold? Did I overheat? So, and then, finally, that's yet another one of my Bangle JS watches there. I've got quite a few of these because the tracker outputs, it broadcasts its data over Bluetooth, so I can actually have a little heads-up display on my watch showing me the data. And there, what it's showing is the fluid drunk. That was a separate project. I thought it might be interesting to measure that. So I've got a Camelback. I put a flow meter on it that broadcasts over Bluetooth. I got the tracker capturing that data and then broadcasting it. So again, it's just, so I'm probably not going to use that going forward because it's a bit of a pain, but it was just interesting. There's the idea I could have an idea of, it would be interesting. What happens if I recorded that? Would that be useful information? But I can just, hook it up using Bluetooth or ANTs, add the code into the tracker, and then say, I can then get a graph like this out and say, okay, well, what happened? So yeah, great fun. It's one of those project ways you saw for the pictures going through it. It gets a bit out of hand at times.
No, I think that's a very common thing with these kinds of projects. When you're making something that's fully bespoke for what your purposes are, you're gonna think of those things of oh, actually, I do want to keep track of my glucose. That's actually really good information to have when I'm on these 24-hour plus marathons. I can't imagine doing that myself, but it's incredible to see that people are doing it. Yeah. And then, this is all really because like you said, when you're doing these really long hauls, your brain does stop thinking. It doesn't really process your information the way you need it to. So being able to check back and see where your stuff is, just being able to say okay, I've even the water aspect of okay, I drank this much water. I should probably drink some more water. Water's good.
Yeah. But in fact, it's also, I can have it broadcasting it. And I've got a website, and you can go on there. You can see live data for how it's going, and you can see what's happened. And you saw that first graph where all the little red dots highlighting. Oh yeah, blood sugar's dropped here. It's that's also not only seeing the data after the event, but I can have people keep an eye on it and checking.
Yeah, it's good to have folks know where you are in the world, especially when you're doing something like this, where you're overnight in these mountains. Things happen, unfortunately. And so being able to be found and taken care of, that's invaluable. I mean, I could definitely see this working in a lot of contexts beyond just ultramarathon. There's so many times where we do need to keep track of people and things and know where they are and how they're doing.
Yeah, so I was talking to a guy who was doing the race across America. It's a cycling race, the race across America, the RAM race. And he was talking about this, he was interested, well, could I use this on the bike? Because then I can monitor on the bike how I'm going. But as you know, it's a similar thing where they're doing ridiculous distances, thousands of miles, and being able to have live broadcast of, okay, well, what's my heart rate? What's my blood sugar? Yeah,
especially the fact that there wasn't a device that was already hitting all of these points, that you had to cobble together 6 different things to get this info. It's kind of shocking considering that people have been doing long haul running, bike, etc. trips for a very long time now. I'm kind of amazed that it took this long for anyone to be like, actually, what if one device did all these
If you could
things?
call it, yeah.
Yeah, what an incredible way of like, and I mean,
And I just love the data. Yeah, you see like those graphs. It's the fact you can look at it afterwards. Like there, you see, oh, what happens when you eat McDonald's? Oh yeah, big spike.
big hump.
That was after the event. That's you see that just before.
Yeah,
that,
you need the post event.
I've left and then gone straight to McDonald's.
Then post event carb refueling is very important.
Yeah.
What do you kind of see coming next with this project? Are you going to keep finding ways to build upon it, or are you feeling really comfortable with where it's at?
At the moment, it's it just works. I'm just happy with what it's got. So what's more likely is that if I think of additional stuff I can connect up or hook up, because it's open source and because I say I can connect to any Bluetooth or this like the Sport Ant Plus devices. It's just a few minutes work just to add the code in to do that. So so generally it just does what I need it to do at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I will probably do it. I've got another build designed, so it's nothing major, just some minor tweaks to the component layouts that I've. So the design that's on, so the one I'm running with at the moment is not the same as the one I've actually open sourced. So yeah. I'm going to do a new build with the later improvements, which is just literally it's moving some components around and changing the orientation just to make it easier to build into the case, because it was quite
maybe
a tight
having
fit.
those holes so that you can secure it in the case, things like that.
So I just couldn't believe it when I was trying to build the case. It was like, oh,
those nitty gritty details really go right out of the mind when you're finally like, oh wait, I fit it all on a board.
Exactly.
It's an incredible project. I'm really excited that you're able to A, make something that works so well for your needs, and B, to see how other people are going to interact with it and build on it. It's just really neat to see something like this come into fruition. I can see a lot of folks getting very engaged with this. Yeah,
that's the thing I'm trying to work out is there a way to make it easy? Because the problem at the moment, it is, to make one of these yourself, you do need to be good. It's a lot of work to do, as you can imagine, doing, hot plate surface mount soldering for a board with this many really small components on. So trying to work out is there any way to, that's what I was looking at, is there any sort of off-the-shelf, fabrication services you can use? The problem I did look at a few, I can't remember the names of them. There's one or two I looked at, but the problem there was getting the combination of components that are on it was difficult.
Yeah.
Because say things like the albeit when I was looking at that option, that was actually just sort of towards the tail end of lockdown. So there were a major component shortages. So finding a supplier that could actually supply the mobile chips, was the challenge there. So that was the only thing that I'm a bit, not annoyed about. A bit concerned about at the moment is that so finding somebody that can fabricate. So I think somebody's just pinged to say, JLC PCB can do it, but I did look at there, but the problem is they couldn't supply. I think like the NRF 52840 module I use, they don't have one of those. But the option is, what you can do is buy the components, send them there, and they will fabricate them. But then it's the madness of, I'm ordering the components from China, they're coming to me, I'm then posting them back to China to be fabricated on a board that then gets posted over to me. So it's it's trying to find a solution that works for that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there'll definitely be some things that start to pop up. I think, JLC PCB and working with some other folks and seeing how you can streamline the process a little bit.
So that's what I'm going to look into next, to see what how can I get it made for other people to use? Because I say it is not simple. It is quite a complicated build.
Yeah, definitely, but a very successful build. Also just fun to relearn or learn new skills like this again and be able to see.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've had so much fun. Yeah, I've had so much fun building it and learning. I say until I started this, I'd not used KiCad at all. I'd not done any PCB design. I'd not done any surface mount, soldering. And then you look, I've designed a 4-layer, quite a complicated 4-layer PCB that is really quite small and compact. Sorry. and as I say, I've built a surface mount, fabrication, system. So yeah, great fun.
It's incredible. It's really such a large amount of work, and the fact that you did it all yourself in your home on your dining room table, which I'm sure everyone in the house loved.
Oh, they love it. Yeah, they're used to it by now. It's just amazing what technology is available now, and just how you couldn't have possibly even contemplated doing this a few years ago, and it's just how quickly things have changed. The fact that there's no way you could design that sort of circuit board yourself before, or even have those sort of processors with that much power in such a small space with just components you can buy for not much money. The overall build cost of this, it's probably less than £100.
Yeah, it's just extremely empowering to be able to make your own devices in this way. It's kind of everything to be able to have that kind of control.
And 3D printing, similar. It's just amazing what we can do now. We're living in the future. It's great.
We really are. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking to us about your Evor Trek. And really looking forward to seeing other ways that it can come out and exist, and how the next version, how it all comes together. It's all going to be very exciting to see.
Cool. Many thanks. Cheers.
Okay, and that is our show today. That is everyone. A lot of really rad projects to be keeping your eyes on and keeping track of. So we'll have all the information on finding these projects and these creators in the show notes. And we'll see you next month. Next month we will be streaming on March 20th. Because February is a short month. So we'll be back again on March 20th with 3 new projects, 3 new exciting stories, and hope you have a good one, folks.